Most beginners do not fail because they are lazy. They fail because nobody showed them the order. They buy the animals first, then try to figure out the feed, the fencing, the water, and the waste later. By the time the bills start stacking up, the dream already feels heavier than they expected. 1 acre is not too small to produce real food, but it is too small for random animals. On limited land, every animal needs a clear job. If it does not give food, fertility, pest control, pollination, compost, or feed support, it should not be part of your first system. That is the rule for this video. Every animal must earn its place, not because it is cute, popular, or common on homesteading channels. It must make the land stronger, not just make the chore list longer. Some animals give you eggs, some give you meat, some turn waste into soil, some protect the garden, pollinate the plants, or turn a small water system into protein. When you choose them in the right order, a small homestead stops feeling like scattered chores and starts acting like a food system. Today, we are going through 7 small homestead animals that can help feed a family on limited land. Not with fantasy promises, not with zero feed bills, not with the idea that you will never need a grocery store again, but with a realistic plan for eggs, meat, fish, honey, compost, pest control, pollination, and turning waste back into food. Here is what happens on many small homesteads. A beginner gets a backyard, a half acre, or a full acre, and they finally feel like they can start producing food. Chickens usually come first, because everyone says they are the gateway animal. And to be fair, chickens can be a great place to start. Then the excitement grows. Ducks look useful for garden pests. Rabbits sound like efficient meat animals. Quail seem easy because they need so little space. Before long, the homestead has several animals, several feeding routines, several water stations, and several messes that do not connect. That is when the pressure starts. The feed store becomes a regular stop. Bedding costs more than expected. The garden still needs compost. Rabbit manure sits in one place. Chicken bedding piles up in another. And duck water turns one corner of the yard into mud. The problem is not the land. The problem is not even the animals. The problem is that they were added as separate projects. On small land, separate projects become separate chores. And too many chores can burn out a beginner fast. A small homestead cannot afford waste. If manure is not becoming fertility, it becomes smell. If scraps are not becoming feed or compost, they become trash. If an animal eats every day but does not support the family, the garden, or the soil, it becomes expensive quickly. But when the pieces connect, everything changes. Kitchen scraps can move into compost or animal feed. Rabbit manure can strengthen garden beds. Worms can turn waste into castings. Ducks can reduce pests. Bees can improve pollination. And fish can add protein without needing pasture. That is the real goal. Not more animals, but better connections. A productive homestead is not built by collecting every animal you like. It is built by choosing animals that solve problems for the land and for the family. Let's start with chickens. Chickens are the animal most beginners think of first. And that makes sense. They are familiar, useful, and easy to understand. A few hens can give a family fresh eggs, manure for compost, pest control, and a daily routine that teaches basic animal care. For many people, chickens are the first time the backyard starts giving something back. But chickens are also easy to misunderstand. Backyard eggs are not automatically free eggs. If your hens live in a bare run, eat only bagged feed, and never contribute anything back to the homestead, those eggs can become expensive. The basket may look full, but the feed bill tells the real story. That does not make chickens a bad choice. It just means they need more than one purpose. They should connect to the kitchen, the compost pile, and the garden. They can eat safe scraps. scratch through compost material, hunt insects, and help turn bedding into fertility. Their value is not only in the eggs, it is also in the work they do around the system. A good flock can clean up fallen produce, stir compost material, and turn waste into manure. That is when chickens start pulling their weight. For most beginners, small is better. 4 to 6 hens can provide useful egg production without overwhelming the land or the routine. More birds mean more feed, more manure, more bedding, more predator pressure, and more daily management. Bigger is not always better when space is limited. A common mistake is buying too many chicks because chicks look cheap. The real cost is not the chick. The real cost is the co-op, the run, the fencing, the feeder, the waterer, the bedding, the feed, and the predator protection. Skip those things, and the flock becomes stressful before it becomes productive. Start with a small flock and build a system around them. Give them a secure co-op, clean water, shade, dry bedding, and a run that can be managed. Then connect their bedding and manure to compost, so the flock supports the garden instead of only consuming feed. Chickens are a good first animal because they teach the rhythm of homesteading. You learn to check water, observe behavior, collect food, and notice small problems early. But eggs do not solve everything. A family can eat eggs every morning and still depend on the grocery store for most of its protein. That is where the next animal becomes important. The second animal is rabbits. Rabbits may be one of the most practical meat animals for small land. They are quiet, compact, and do not require pasture. A simple setup can fit near a shed, under shade, or beside the garden. For a family that is comfortable raising meat animals, rabbits can turn a very small footprint into real food. Their food value is clear. Rabbits provide lean meat without needing a large barn, heavy fencing, or acres of grass. They can be raised in hutches or other carefully managed systems. They are also quiet enough for places where larger animals or noisy birds would create problems. But the hidden value is the manure. Rabbit manure is often called cold manure because it can usually go directly into garden beds without burning plants. That makes it different from chicken or duck manure, which often needs composting first. On small land, that is a major advantage. The garden produces weeds, greens, trimmings, and extra plant material. Some of that can support the rabbits. The rabbits produce manure. The manure feeds the garden. And the garden grows more food for the family and more scraps for the system. That loop is why rabbits are so useful. They are not just a meat animal. They are also a soil fertility animal. If you only look at the meat, you miss half of what they can do. Rabbits still need good management. They need shade, airflow, clean water, and protection from heat. In many climates, heat is more dangerous than cold. A hutch in full summer sun can turn from useful to risky very quickly. Do not assume rabbits are easy just because they are small. Small does not mean careless. You need a plan for breeding, separating animals, handling manure, and processing if you raise them for meat. You also need to be honest about whether your family is ready for that part of the system. A beginner should not build a large rabbit setup in the first month. Start small. Learn their daily care, their heat tolerance, their feeding habits, and how much manure they create. If that manure has a place to go from the beginning, the system starts paying back early. Begin with a simple, clean, shaded setup. Keep records if breeding is part of the plan. Do not let the population grow faster than your ability to manage it. A rabbit system should feel steady, not like it is running ahead of you. Now you have eggs and a possible source of quiet meat. You also have manure that can build soil. But the garden still has enemies. Slugs do not care about your homestead plan. And flies do not wait until your system is ready. That is where the right duck becomes more than just another bird. Next are Muscovy ducks. Muscovy ducks are different from the ducks most beginners imagine. They are quieter than many common duck breeds, strong foragers, and useful around gardens, orchards, compost areas, and wet corners of the homestead. They can provide eggs, meat, and pest control, but their biggest job on small land is helping manage insects and soft-bodied pests. Muscovies hunt flies, mosquitoes, slugs, beetles, and other small pests. That matters around animal areas, compost zones, and garden edges. Chickens scratch, but ducks patrol differently. A Muscovy can work damp places where pest pressure builds, and chickens may not be the best tool. They also have a noise advantage. Muscovies do not have the loud constant quack many people associate with ducks. That makes them a better fit for some homes with close neighbors. Quiet matters when your homestead is not far from other people. Their food value can come from eggs, meat, or both. Muscovy meat is different from typical duck meat, and many homesteaders value it as a leaner option. Their eggs can also be useful for cooking and baking, but they should not be added only because they are interesting birds. They need to solve a real problem. If your garden has pest pressure, if your land has wet corners, or if flies build up around compost and animal areas, Muscovies can be useful. If you do not have a plan for water, they can quickly become a problem instead. Water is the honest warning. Ducks can make a mess when it is poorly managed. They do not need a large pond, but they do need clean water deep enough to drink and wash properly. If that water spills into the same patch of ground every day, mud and smell can take over fast. A common mistake is treating ducks like chickens with wider feet. They are not chickens. They need different water habits, different bedding management, and a dry place to rest. Ignore that, and the duck area can become the part of the homestead you avoid. Build the water plan before the ducks arrive. Use a tub, small pool, or controlled water station that can drain, move, or be refreshed easily. Give them secure shelter and predator protection. Keep them away from young seedlings until the plants are strong enough. Muscovy ducks deserve a spot when they reduce pests, provide eggs or meat, and use spaces other animals do not use well. But they still require space, water, and management. Some beginners need something smaller, faster, and easier to contain. That is where quail can make a tiny corner productive. The fourth animal is quail. Quail are small, quiet, fast, and easy to underestimate. For beginners with limited space, they can be one of the quickest ways to produce eggs without building a full chicken setup. Coturnix quail can start laying much faster than chickens. They do it in a small enclosure that takes up very little room. That quick result matters. Beginners need early wins. When a small system starts producing food quickly, it builds confidence. It proves that food production does not always require a big pasture, a huge co-op, or years of waiting. The food value is simple. Eggs first, meat second, if the family wants that. Quail eggs are small, but they can be steady and useful for a household. The birds themselves can also be part of a short meat cycle when the setup is designed for it. Quail are valuable because they do not compete for much land. A small group can fit near a shed, garage, covered wall, or other protected area. In many setups, about 1 square foot per bird is enough when housing is clean and well managed. That leaves the rest of the property for garden beds, rabbits, compost, bees, ducks, chickens, or fish. But quail are not tiny chickens. They need higher protein feed, steady clean water, good airflow, and housing that keeps them dry and calm. Feed them like chickens, crowd them too tightly, or ignore cleaning, and production drops fast. Their small size does not forgive poor management. Compact does not mean automatic. A dirty cage becomes a health problem. Poor airflow becomes a stress problem. Too many males become a fighting problem. The wrong feed becomes a production problem. Even the cage design matters. Quail can launch upward when startled. So housing should be built with their behavior in mind. A setup that works for another bird may not be safe or comfortable for quail. Small animals still need thoughtful systems. Their manure can help the garden too, but it should usually be composted before use. That gives quail another role in the fertility cycle, just not in the same direct way as rabbits. Every output needs a destination. Otherwise, it becomes another mess to manage. Start with a small group and learn the routine. Feed, water, egg collection, cleaning, and observation. Do not scale until the system feels easy. Quail are worth considering because they turn a tiny footprint into fast food. At this point, the homestead has eggs, possible meat, pest control, and manure from several places. But now another question appears. Where does all the waste go? And how does it become future food? That is why compost worms belong on this list. The fifth animal is compost worms. Compost worms may not feel exciting at first. They do not lay eggs for breakfast. They do not give meat for the freezer. They do not make honey. Most beginners do not dream about worms when they picture a homestead. But compost worms can be one of the most important animals you keep. They feed the part of the homestead that feeds everything else. The soil. Without better soil, every garden bed has to work harder. Compost worms turn organic waste into worm castings. One of the most useful soil amendments a small homestead can produce. Kitchen scraps, garden waste, old bedding, leaves, and some aged manure can all become part of a worm system when managed correctly. Red wigglers are commonly used because they live near the surface and process organic material quickly. Reducing grocery dependence is not only about raising animals. It is also about growing more food. Growing more food depends on soil fertility. Weak soil makes every garden harder, while strong soil makes the whole property more productive. A healthy garden gives vegetables, herbs, greens, roots, and extra plant material. Some of that feeds the family. Some supports animals. Some returns to compost. Worms help keep that cycle moving. That is why worms matter more than they look. They are the quiet workers between the animal system and the garden system. They take things that could become waste and help turn them into fertility. On small land, that quiet job has real value. Rabbit manure can feed garden beds directly, but it can also support compost systems when used carefully. Chicken bedding can break down into compost. Garden scraps that might rot or smell can move into a worm bin. The result is a cleaner, tighter system. Do not underestimate worms because they do not produce obvious food. Food security is not only about what you harvest today. It is also about whether the garden can keep producing next season. Worms help build that future. Their care is simple, but not careless. They need moisture, bedding, shade, oxygen, and the right kind of food. The bedding should feel like a wrung-out sponge. Damp but not dripping. Too wet, and the bin can turn sour. Too dry, and the worms slow down. They also need protection from bad inputs. Too much citrus, meat, oil, salty food, or heat can create problems. A worm bin is low effort, but it is still alive. Treat it like a small livestock system, not a trash can. Start with one bin near the garden or compost area. Keep it shaded. Feed it slowly. Learn the moisture level before adding too much. Use the castings where they matter most, like seed starting mixes, raised beds, herbs, or high-value crops. Compost worms convert waste into future food. They may never be the most exciting animal on the property, but they may be one of the reasons the soil improves every year. Now the system is starting to connect. Birds produce eggs and manure. Rabbits produce meat and cold manure. Worms build soil. The garden gets stronger. But there is another animal that can make the entire garden more productive without taking up much land at all. The sixth animal is honeybees. Honeybees are different from every animal on this list. They do not need a run, pasture, hutch, or pond. A hive can sit in a small corner and still affect the productivity around it. That makes bees powerful on small land. Their obvious product is honey. Honey can replace some store-bought sweeteners and can be used in tea, baking, cooking, and simple food storage. Beeswax can also be useful for candles, salves, wraps, and other small homestead products. Those things have value. But honey is not the biggest reason bees matter. Pollination is. A small homestead with garden beds, berries, fruit trees, squash, cucumbers, melons, or flowering herbs can benefit from strong pollinator activity. Bees help flowers become fruit. They can make existing plants more productive without adding another animal that eats feed every day. That is how honeybees help the whole system. They do not just produce one food. They help other plants produce more food. An animal that improves the garden can be just as important as an animal that fills a feeder. But bees are not a casual beginner project. Do not place a hive on the property and simply wait for honey. A beehive is a living colony. If you ignore it for too long, small problems can become colony-level problems. Bees need seasonal care. They need observation. They need protection from pests and disease. They need a water source and enough forage nearby. They also need to be placed where people, children, pets, and daily traffic are not constantly disturbing them. Local conditions matter a lot. Climate, flowering seasons, hive pests, local rules, and neighborhood comfort all affect whether bees are a good fit. Even a good hive location on paper can be wrong if it sits too close to a walkway, play area, or neighbor's fence. For some families, honeybees should not be a first-year animal, and that is okay. This video is not telling you to add all 7 animals immediately. It is showing how each one can pull its weight when the system is ready. Add bees after your garden. Fruit trees, berries, or flowering plants are already part of the homestead. That way, the hive is not just a hobby sitting in the corner. It has a real job. Learn from local beekeepers before you expect honey. Understand basic hive inspections. Place the hive carefully. Take safety seriously, especially if anyone in the home has allergy concerns. Honeybees are not just a honey system. They are a pollination system. They can multiply the value of the plants already growing around them. At this point, the homestead has land animals, compost animals, and pollinators, but one layer is still missing from many small properties. Water. The final animal is fish, or a small aquaponic system. Fish are the final animal on this list because they can be powerful. But they are not where most beginners should start. A small fish or aquaponic system can add a different kind of protein to the homestead. Instead of using pasture, it uses water. Instead of relying only on soil beds, it can connect fish and plants through nutrients. In a basic aquaponic system, fish waste feeds beneficial bacteria. Those bacteria help convert waste into nutrients plants can use. The plants take up those nutrients and help clean the water. That is the basic loop. Fish feed plants. Plants help clean water. The system can produce fish and greens in a small footprint. For limited land, that is exciting because fish do not need a field. A tank, greenhouse system, small pond, or controlled aquaponic area can add food without taking pasture away from other animals. Fish also add diversity. Eggs are useful. Rabbit meat can be useful. Duck or quail can help. But fish gives another kind of protein. That matters for a family trying to reduce grocery dependence in realistic ways. A small fish system will not replace the grocery store overnight, but it can become one more layer of production on land that is already working hard. Fish are not magic. Aquaponics is not an automatic food machine. Fish are a water system before they are a meat system. If water quality is wrong, fish can die quickly. If oxygen is low, The system can fail. If temperature is wrong, growth slows or health suffers. If filtration is poor, waste builds up. If feed is poor, the system does not perform well. This is why fish usually belong later in the journey. A chicken gives warning signs you can see. A rabbit may show heat stress. A duck makes a mess you notice right away. Water problems can become serious before a beginner understands what is happening. Fish are not too hard, but they require a different kind of attention. You need to understand water testing, oxygen, filtration, temperature, stocking density, and backup plans. If the power goes out and your system depends on pumps or aeration, you need to know what happens next. The species also matters. What works in one climate may not work in another. Warm water fish, cold water fish, pond systems, tank systems, and aquaponic systems all require different planning. The right fish is the one that fits your climate, water, and skill level. Start small and simple. Do not build a giant aquaponic system just because it looks impressive online. Begin with a manageable tank or pond. Learn the water before you scale the fish. Fish deserve a spot only when they are part of a stable water loop, not when they are added as a trendy project. They can be a powerful final layer, but only when the system is ready. Before you add any of these animals, there is one mistake you need to avoid. The biggest mistake is starting with too many animals before building the loops. This is where many beginners get overwhelmed. They want food security, so they add animals quickly. Chickens for eggs, rabbits for meat, ducks for pests, quail for fast production, worms for compost, bees for honey, and fish for protein. On paper, it sounds like a complete homestead. In real life, if you add everything at once, it can become chaos. Every animal needs housing. Every animal needs water. Every animal needs feed. Every animal creates waste. That means every animal also adds pressure to your daily routine. A small homestead can hold a lot of production, but a beginner cannot learn every system in the same month. Trying to do everything at once is one of the fastest ways to turn excitement into exhaustion. The goal is not to collect animals. The goal is to build loops. Before you add anything new, ask what it eats, where its waste goes, what food it produces, what problem it solves, what daily work it adds, and what happens if something goes wrong. If you cannot answer those questions, wait. Waiting is not failure. Waiting is wisdom. A slower start often builds a stronger homestead. A chicken coop with no compost plan is just another chore. A rabbit hutch with no manure plan is just another chore. Ducks with no water management become a mess. Quail with poor housing become stressful. Fish with no water knowledge become a risk. But when the animals connect, the land starts to work differently. Chicken bedding becomes compost. Rabbit manure feeds garden beds. Worm castings improve soil. Better soil grows more food. More flowers support bees. Bees improve pollination. Fish can support plants when the water system is designed well. That is the difference between a crowded homestead and a connected one. A crowded place drains you. A connected place teaches you, feeds you, and improves over time. So, what should you actually start with? So which animal should a beginner start with first? The answer depends on your land, your time, your comfort level, and your goal. But the main rule stays the same. Do not start with all 7. If you want the easiest daily food, start with chickens or quail. Chickens are better if you have space for a secure co-op, a run, and a simple compost connection. Quail are better if you have limited space, close neighbors, or want fast egg production in a compact setup. If you already have scraps, bedding, leaves, or a garden, add compost worms early. They are simple, quiet, and useful. They help turn waste into soil before the waste becomes a problem. Worms may not feel exciting, but they make the whole system cleaner. If your family is ready for meat animals, rabbits can be the next serious layer. They need planning, shade, and honest management, but they can provide quiet protein and valuable manure in very little space. For small land, that is hard to ignore. If your garden has pest pressure and you can manage water well, Muscovy ducks may be worth adding. They can help with insects and provide eggs or meat. But do not bring ducks home until you know how their water will be handled. The setup decides whether they help or hurt. Honeybees should come when your plants are ready for them. A hive has more value when the homestead already has flowers, garden crops, berries, or fruit trees. Bees can support the whole food system, but they deserve real learning and careful placement. Fish and aquaponics should usually come later. They can be excellent, but water systems require attention. Learn soil, compost, birds, or rabbits first. Then add fish when you are ready to manage water quality as carefully as animal feed. A good beginner order might look like this. Start with chickens or quail for eggs. Add compost worms to handle waste and build soil. Add rabbits if your family wants small space meat. Add Muscovy ducks if pest control and water management make sense. After that, add honeybees when your garden and fruit plants are ready. Add fish or aquaponics when you are ready for a stable water loop. That is how a small homestead becomes productive without becoming overwhelming. One layer at a time, and one animal proving its purpose before the next one arrives. Here is the real takeaway. A small homestead does not need to become crowded to become productive. It needs to become connected. That is the real lesson. The best animals for limited land are not always the biggest, the trendiest, or the most impressive. Chickens give eggs, turn compost, and help control pests. Rabbits provide quiet meat and cold manure for the garden. Muscovy ducks reduce pests and use wet areas wisely. Quail give fast eggs in a tiny footprint. Compost worms turn waste into soil. Honeybees pollinate the plants that feed the family. Fish can turn a stable water system into protein and plant growth. Each one has a job. None of these animals should be added just because they are popular. Popularity is not enough. Cute is not enough. Even food production alone is not always enough if the animal creates more problems than the system can handle. The right animal gives something back. It feeds the family, improves the soil, supports the garden, reduces pests, pollinates crops, or makes waste useful again. That is how a small homestead becomes stronger instead of heavier. For beginners, the best homestead is not the one with the most animals. It is the one where the work makes sense. The scraps have somewhere to go. The manure has a purpose. The garden gets stronger. The animals support the land. And the land supports the family. That is how you reduce grocery dependence without burning yourself out. Start small. Build one loop at a time. Let each animal prove its purpose before you add the next one. Because the land was not the problem. The order was. And once you get the order right, even a small piece of land can begin to feed a family in ways most beginners never thought possible. If you want to keep building this system step by step, watch the next video where we break down which small homestead animal you should start with first based on space, feed cost, daily work, and beginner risk.